Right. Hello. Good morning. It's a good morning today. It's weird. Um, Felt like the last few days it's just been like stressful and like angstful mornings. I think it like there's always many reasons for that, but today like kids were pretty fine. I feel better. Like I'm adjusting to like my new employer and trying to figure out like where am I most productive and where can I apply my skills and all of that. And like moving as a full team to a new employer and being kind of split apart, and then seeing opportunities to kind of get back together and kind of create that synergy that we had at Code Sandbox is really great to see that happening. So yeah, and I played the Split Fiction yesterday with my cousin, which I have like a long childhood history with playing games. So that was super nice. Anyways, I feel like these streams are kind of like a retro psychological slash what's on my mind retro. So I have to start with that. Anyways, so we're still refactoring this idea of like as I mentioned in the title of the stream, there's this idea of applying reactive primitives to React, and there's two ways to do it. It was kind of funny because I was watching the Vue Amsterdam conference yesterday, and Evan Yu states that React is the only library or framework or whatever you want to call it that doesn't apply reactive primitives. Everyone else does. And this whole like project here, which is going to result in us like actually comparing external and like fused reactive primitives with React, is based on the statement that what if React was actually reactive? Did we actually need to have concurrent mode? Did we actually need to have a React compiler? How would it change the developer experience? Like for me personally, I think it would be all good. Like, or not all good, nothing is like a silver bullet, but it would be overwhelmingly better for everyone. And then, but the question is like, does it really make, like, if we're actually going to apply reactive primitives to React now, is it even possible to introduce them in React itself? And there's also like two types of reactive primitives. You have like immutable reactive primitives, like signals, or you can do more like MobX, where you actually have objects and you you have the mutation API. So, but the thing is, if you're using signals, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but you will still have problems in React. So for example, if you're using signals, maybe we can use the family scrum. Where are you? Family scrum. Use family scrum. So here I'm using a provider where we just bring in all the state. If I were to use, well, funny enough, we're kind of doing it here already. The point is that you can't like pass a signal of signals. It's kind of weird. Well, there's two things about signals. One thing is they're only values. They don't have structure, right? You can't nest signals, at least not typically. And then, so what happens is that if you expose them on a provider, you just need to use an object to like provide multiple signals. And there you could nest it, right? But now you have to memo this object to avoid the parent from reconciling. But what's interesting about the project we're using here is that we apply automatic observation in components. So this family scrum provider is actually an observer, and it's memoed. So all components are memoed and observers, because that makes sense in a reactive world, because you can just pass branches of state around that never changes, because it's what values you actually look at in components that dictates whenever it reconciles. So this in and of itself is perfectly fine now, because this component will never reconcile. But just having to like understanding that, like maybe you don't have to understand it, but that in and of itself is a little bit mind-bending, I think. Where was I going with this? Yeah, so if you're using signals with the same like plugin that makes everything observers, you could do something similar. You could just expose them on an object like this. Yeah, I guess that's fine. But the issue is more how you access them. I think that's the biggest hurdle of signals now, is because you have to do count equals signal 0, and then you have to do either count.value, you have to do this count, or there's a last API which is still have count, but then you have count.get or count count.set. So these are like the conventions for dealing with a signal, and maybe that is fine, but it's like, but again, like I don't think we really want this. I think we want what, for example, Vue did. So Vue has these reactive primitives as well, but it doesn't strictly, like I think it's called like ref, and I believe they use count.value. Oh my god, we're diverging. We should be refactoring, but let's look at this. Let's see. So you have ref. Yeah, so they have dot value, right? But they also have something called reactive. And here you just say state dot count. And this is very like, this is how we're used to using the language. It's designed to be used like this, right? Why push against that? And you can argue because it's a problem with React, because it's based on this immutable value comparison or shallow comparison reconciliation. That's true, but the reconciler doesn't really, the reconciler only cares about immutable virtual DOM nodes. It doesn't care about does it even care about that? Because when you do reconcile, well, yeah, I guess it does. Yeah, of course it does. Immutable virtual DOM nodes, but that's like an implementation detail of like how the UI updates. That doesn't have to leak into the actual component and state management experience. It only needs to know when the component needs to reevaluate its DOM nodes, virtual DOM nodes. So yeah, I just wanna, but that's what we're pushing with this project. It's like, okay, even if we go reactive primitives, we're not quite there yet. And then you can argue I don't like proxies, and that's perfectly fair. Like, you don't really want these proxies. And the funny thing is that you can actually get away from the proxy, because you can rather wrap the object so that count becomes like a getter kind of thing using reactive. But the challenge then is things like read-only, nested state, arrays. You have to use proxies for arrays. So yeah, but at the end of the day, you don't really care about the objects being proxies. I wish, like, even Chrome could just log it out differently. Like, it would still show the object, but then you would rather have a proxy reference on on the object, or they would just display the internal, like it's just the way Chrome shows the proxy, right? So that shouldn't prevent you from taking advantage of something very powerful. Anyways, I think we're just gonna, what was my conclusion to this? Yeah, so I think that's kind of what I want to do. It's like I want to take like we call it oppgjør in Norwegian. It's like just taking like a state of things and like really talk about that React is doing something that the others are not, and talk about the difference between immutability and shallow comparison in virtual DOM nodes compared to state management. Like they don't have to be the same paradigm. That's something I want to talk about. And then I want to talk about doing reactive primitives and observation, and like how to do observation where there's all these like explicit observer higher order components, you have hooks, and all of this, and you don't really have to think about that. You shouldn't think about that. Like you don't do that in any other frameworks. Like Vue doesn't have an observer, explicit observer. Svelte doesn't have an explicit observer. That's just in the framework, right? And React should be the same. So yeah, I think that, you know what? I think it will be fun to write an article about how to make React reactive. That will be fun. And then talk about like how the others are doing it, and like the benefits and drawbacks. How it ultimately how it affects developer experience and performance. Because we kind of think about performance coming at the cost of improved developer experience, but that's not true. Because with React, we have the exact opposite. Like objectively, you get a better developer experience by using reactive primitives. And it's way more performant than immutable shallow comparison in state management. Anyways, but we have this final refactor we need to get done, which is these to-do assignments. So we're just gonna see if we can like literally just push ourselves through this, because this is gonna be rough. So we have this week to do, and this is now activity by user ID. So if we're gonna find these assignments, I think we're just gonna use activity by user ID, and then we have to use an object here instead. And then we'll do the same here, because as I mentioned, like we're going through like the fusing of reactive state now. So we're using like actual hooks, and we're all inside React, and that just leans us towards using more DTOs. Like when we go outside of React, we can very easily wrap data in like UI specific entities. That's like partially data and partially interactions with that data. So you basically create, I really like that concept. It cleans up the UI so much. But with React, we're used to this. Like we're getting some data here, we're doing a lookup over here, we'll bring the data together. And then if I'm gonna do something with that data, I have to find that function over here. I have to pass the ID of the data into that function so it knows what data it's going to interact with, even though I actually literally have the data in the component. You don't pass these things by reference. You use IDs, right? And it's not like, it's not bad, but it's just not, I guess it's just a different way of thinking about things. But passing things by, so what would be very unnatural to me is like if you have a mix of that, that's the confusing part. So you have to go all in on, okay, you're grabbing some data, you map over the data, you create an actual entity that's a fusing of the data with interactions with that data, right? So you have everything on that single entity. So if you want to, for example, update the title, you would just call a method on the entity itself, like update title, right? And it internally has a reference to the data and how to do that update. But if you move update title outside somewhere else, and then you actually take the entity itself, you don't take the ID of the entity, you take the entity itself to update the title, that's like bad. So you have to go all the way over and say, okay, we're not gonna like pass actual entity references. We're just gonna pass like IDs to entities, so that the update title takes the ID of the entity you're gonna update the title for. Yeah. But there's like writing code, yeah, but all of this is going to be like super clear after these refactors. So let's get through it. Sorry. So this is to-do assignment. So family scrum family.users. Yeah, and that's also okay. So let's call it family user. So we're going to see if we can do some, we can take object.values here. See if we can do some memo on this. So we have a family member, and then we have to do assignments. Yeah, so now we don't actually have to find. So this is the thing I do like about, because there's another difference here, and that is if you lean towards having like these wrapped entities, right? So you get your data as an array. Like data comes as an array from the server always. You don't send a record where the keys are the IDs and then you get the entities, right? You always get an array. So in the first paradigm, you map over that array, you wrap each data with a protective layer, like a protective interface where you can't manipulate the data itself, but you get these methods that will manipulate the data and also like sync that with the server. And this works really well for the UI, right? Because the UI is also based on arrays. You want to map over those same arrays and you want to like show it in the UI. But what happens when you go to the other paradigm is that you want to denormalize, so that when you get these arrays, you never want them as arrays. What you want to change them into an object, so you have a lookup, right? Just like users here and what was it? These assignments, activity by user ID. These are records of, you have a reference to some data, right? Not the data itself, but a reference to the data. So that when I'm going through the assignments, going through the users now, I can just check in the to-do assignments, family member. Oh, don't we have the ID of the family member? Oh my God. Okay. So we need keys. Oh my God. Family member ID. And then, come on. And then family users, family member ID. The point is that you're doing these lookups. Family user. Oh, sorry. Family scrum.family users. There we go. So you do these lookups, right? And this is very, very traditional React code. But you shouldn't be doing that when you're building UI. Like you should just be iterating stuff and just using the data, and you have the methods right there. It's discoverable at the point of consumption. That's a good statement. Discoverable at the point of consumption, which is not how React works. It's like all the data and all the functions are just spread all over the place. And you really have to know the application to know where to go to drive the state forward. Yeah. So so these lookups are really great if you're following that paradigm. Like, you have to do it like this. There is no other way to do it. But I don't think people understand like the complete other side of this, which is that in just this piece of code, right? You wouldn't have activity by user ID. You wouldn't have family users by ID, right? This would all be just arrays. And each of these arrays, and in, for example, to-do assignments, you would have an array of assignments of actual family members, right? Or even it will be called an assignment that pointed to an actual family member and the assignment itself, with the functionality for the assignment to toggle the assignment. And the reference to the family member would be, you could go to the family member and you could update the name of the family member, for example, whatever, or you could like them. The point is that it's just there. Everything is just there. You don't have to do this cross-reference stuff. So weak activity here would be oh yeah, so this would be family member ID. Yeah. Let's see, and then previous to-do assignments will be the same. Yeah, previous to-do assignments. Oh, did we do a find there as well? This should be... Oh, we did an inline thing. Okay, we're gonna do previous week to do equals. So it kind of looks the same. And oops, sorry, oops. And this also needs to be an object. There we go. Now it looks similar. So previous week to do assignments. Family member ID. Sorry, there was, well, I said it was going to be rough. Family member ID. Yeah, and this is not going to have a default array. Okay, so we have family member ID. Yeah, and then we need family scrum use. We have user ID there, and then this is just, is it you? I think maybe we have to actually sort. Or maybe I make sure. Yeah, something to figure out. So here again, previously I could just change the assignment on the to-do itself, but I can't do that anymore. Now I need to find that functionality somewhere. So where is that functionality? So that would be maybe on, I think it would be on week to-dos. Oh, so, family scrum week to-dos? Shouldn't that be, oh, sorry, weeks, current, and then I'm probably gonna have set assignment there, and then we need a reference to the to-do ID, and then index, and then it's active. We have to do something like this instead. So we're gonna figure that one out. Where previously we had, oh no, did I remove it? Oh, I deleted the, why did I do that? So family, so this would be the Bonsafire branch. Here, so we have the to-do, which has this set assignment. Here we go. And this is like crazy logic. Let's see. So we're gonna go to family scrum use weeks. And then we're gonna give it create weeks. Oh yeah, and then oh my god. Here we go. Yeah, so even this is like, this is where I'm getting like, it's very difficult to switch between these two paradigms. Because now I'm like, just the fact that we're allowing you to define, like, just the fact that you're able to do this is against React. Like count, 0, increase. This is not how we typically do React. So this is also something that I don't know. Yeah. This is the thing that's kind of pushing me back on the whole idea. Is one thing is introducing reactive primitives in React. So maybe a contribution would be just having observation, like automatic observation in components, the Bubble and SWC plugin. That's enough. Because then if you want to use reactive primitives, you can go and use preact signals or some other reactive hook thing. Because then you would still think React. Like it's less of a threshold. Because you just replace use state with use signal. And then that just works out of the box. Yes, you have to do dot value or you have to call it. And yes, you still have to use, think of them as immutable values. But then at least they work with the existing hooks. Right? So even the migration story is so much simpler. Because they have interoperability with the existing hooks, unlike this concept. Because here we're mutating, right? So if you want to use a use effect, you can't do that. It won't work because the value doesn't change. And there's a whole ecosystem of linters and stuff that kind of protects you in this. Like you can still introduce like use reactive effect, right? I wonder if preact does that. You can still do that. But you can also still just use signal effect. So you can do that, but you can also use effect because these values are considered immutable. But Preact is very like, they've gone deep into React to optimize. I don't think, and I think they've been hurt by that. Just having these like gotchas, like they're actually like going in and evaluate like each of these dynamic references. So, because they want to go far, like they wanted to not just reconcile, like have observing components, they want to have observing elements, which is kind of crazy to me. I don't think that's necessary. The problem isn't the actual reconciliation, it's that it's happening unnecessarily across components, not unnecessarily within a single component. But yeah, so it's very interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's too big of a sell. Like, as far we're doing this, it's like just reflecting on this. I don't like React has such a strong history. Morning, Adam. React has such a strong history of selling the concept of immutable values. That's how React works. Everything's based on that. So, oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, it's scary. It's super scary. Like I remember as a consultant, like companies being skeptical to open source, and I even like Overmind. I was working for a customer, and they was going to build a brand new client, but a complex one, so they needed proper state management, and I was just building Overmind. And I told them, like, we can use this thing I'm building, and they were like super skeptical. But I'm like, I'm so excited, right? So they um and then so we used Overmind, and it really helped like the project getting released and me feeling confident about it working, and it did work, and we were super productive in it. But at the same time, like I had the kids and stuff after that, and I kind of dropped out of open source for a while. So they and then they were using new consultants that had never heard of Overmind. And then recently I met like a friend that I've done podcast with, and suddenly he's on that project now and just refactoring everything. Um, yeah, 140 files. That's a lot of files. uh, but yeah, so what I'm starting to think now is that doing this Bonsai project simplifies external state management. Like you have a single primitive with those patterns. So if you want to do reactive external state management, which I personally love to do, and I know you do as well, Adam, it's just there's like no friction there. And then having this like automatic observation in components. Well, 100 times better. That was very specific. Is it exactly 100 times better? But yeah, no, I totally get it. Like, but Angular used to have like Angular has had its piece of history of being garbage. That's for sure. I watched the Angular documentary. It was a really nice summary of like the history of Angular and how even teams we rely so heavily on make bad decisions. Like when they moved from AngularJS to Angular and then rewrote the whole thing in Angular 2 or something. I can't remember the exact history. But yeah, Angular is really shaping up, and it's really cool to see the new team that's working on um, that's working on it, and how they lean to the existing community. Like Angular got signals now because of signals becoming a thing in other frameworks and so on. Yeah, I don't like you can plus anything like in the same file, like x plus y in same file makes you icky. Like I can say Angular templates have their custom templating language that's like shit, needs its own like type resolver. Like that makes me sick. And like React, where it's just JavaScript, so it doesn't need, like, it just uses TypeScript, and whatever features are coming just works with typing. So but I totally get like people have their own personal preferences, but I don't, and that's exactly what you're expressing, right? Like your personal preferences. And I totally get it, but there's no like objectively one thing is better. Well, some things are objectively better than other things, I guess, or objectively bad at least. But there's a sum of things, right? You can say that one thing is really shitty objectively, but that one shitty thing might make a lot of other things much better. So it's very hard to like discuss these things, but that's what makes this fun as well, right? This isn't like we're not like competing over like important things in life. These are like JavaScript framework tools, but we do identify maybe a bit too strongly sometimes. uh but again, it's like a football team or a soccer team or whatever your jive is. Like you get very passionate about it, and that also makes it so much fun. But it all needs to be in good spirit. Like we can't be hooligans, right? Continuing on the sports analogy, like there are some hooligans in the JavaScript ecosystem that just shouts out stuff and emotionally just are way too identify way too much with the tools they're using, as opposed to like taking a step back and reflect on why do people prefer different tools and what benefit do they get out of the thing that I don't understand or I don't like, or look at me being all zen like. Typically I also get emotional about these things. You caught me on a good day, Voldemort. Sorry if like my partner and me, we have this thing where like we feed how should I put this? We kind of feed on each other's energy. So typically one of us is like in a really good mood and the other one is in a really bad mood. And then it's like so annoying when like I'm having like a tantrum for something and then she just tells me, oh, just breathe, relax, reflect, appreciate the good things in life. And it's the complete opposite as well. We need our tantrums. Oh, but yeah, like it's very interesting, like how these, like even I never like used PHP. Well, I guess I did at some point. I did a little bit with WordPress, like a long time ago. But there's something we rarely talk about when we talk about like what's the right thing to use. It's like what's the most accessible thing to use, and PHP was definitely accessible. And it's gotten like technically better over time as well. But that's the story for JavaScript as well, right? It was originally a scripting language, and people still call it a scripting language. But it was accessible. Not only the language itself, but like where the language runs, right? So accessibility is what makes you productive, not doing the right thing. Often doing the right thing prevents you from creating value because you spend so much time just making things right technically, as opposed to producing value for whatever you're for the consumers of whatever you're building. Oh my god, I'm annoyingly philosophical today. Yeah, but yeah, getting back to this thing, I think like going through this refactor, I think it's too big of a sell because I got another idea. I want to go back to, at least we're gonna test this. Git add, git commit, blip. We're gonna go back to the Bonsify branch, and I want to try something. Impact reactive, because I can't remember. Let's see, observers use. Yeah, it has observer. Okay, I want to try something. Well, first we're gonna play with it. Where are we gonna play with it? I guess we can do it on Code Sandbox. No, I wasn't gonna create a sandbox. Ugh. By the way, I'm very close to show you my little AI project. It's very, very cool. I'm not sure if it creates enough value to build anything on it yet, but it's just very, very cool. So I'm gonna show it. I have one final thing to fix there. Let's see. So we're gonna install, what did I call? I kind of regret the name for this. Observing components. Was that what I called it? Yeah. And then we're gonna impact signals. Yeah, impact react signals. So I'm gonna try to combine these two things. I've never tried that before. Plugins, observing components. And then we're gonna import observing components from Bubble plugin, observing components. We have to tell it to use import path, which is impact react signals. Cool. What happened? There we go. Okay, so now we have observing components. So I should be able now to just go in. Let me make, can I make it a little bit bigger? I hate these key bindings. View, zoom in. There we go. I guess this is good enough. So let's see. So instead of having discount, we should be able to do like count equals. Wow, I haven't used this in a long time. Impact react signal. What did I even return here? Did I use dot value? No, we did this thing. We were inspired by set count. Okay. So if I do this and then I have to call it. Yeah, sorry. Now I remember. Yeah, and then set count. Yeah, and I can do that. Does it still work? Look at that. It works. So what's kind of cool about this is that I have never looked at this, like these signals, in the context of having this plugin. So the thing that these signals doesn't handle very well is arrays. Arrays is the reason, well, typically the reason we have performance issues in React. But because this plugin is just making all components observers and memo, you get performance out of the box in the sense that when you do iterate an array of posts, for example, and then you pass a post down to a nested component, that will optimally reconcile because every nested component is already an observer and it has memo. So only when you actually change the post itself, then that component is going to reconcile again. So you kind of eliminate that whole thing. That's not something that you need to think about, which is a good thing. Like you still have to do this like slicing and like merging arrays and all that stuff to kind of yeah. But what I was thinking about is, what if you want to bring this into React itself? So this is the, yeah. But then you could, so for example here, if you had use signal, Oh, sorry. Value t return use state yeah, let's see. Boop. Signal. Oh my god, sorry about this. And then we have to bring back. Oh yeah. Blah. I don't have the patience for this. So I could bring this signal into the actual app as well, where you have count set count, and then you have use signal. But sorry, it doesn't need to be use state. Well, this is the thing, right? How do you most efficiently instantiate something in React? You can't really do that. Like I could use a use ref and it would work, but I would be creating a bunch of signals all the time. That's never applied, which is very annoying. So the only way to kind of instantiate something is to use useState or use memo. Maybe use memo is more efficient. I don't know. Like what has the least overhead? Is it useState or use memo? I guess it looks cleaner though with use memo because it actually returns the thing. Yeah. So I should be able to do exactly the same here now. Yeah. So that's kind of like, and this is what the others do as well. And because, my point here now is that because we have this plugin that makes all components observers a memo, we could also apply this to contexts. So if you had like a function counter provider, for example, provider, you can actually, well, let's just sudo code this a little bit, or maybe counter context, because this is the most important thing to solve. It's the context. Create context null. And this will be children. The value here would be something. That's in there. Children. React node. So here you would have, so maybe you have a count, right? And then you wanted to say, no, I want to, you should only be able to increment that count. So instead of like having an object that defines these things, you use the scope of the provider, and then you could expose like count and increment like this, and then we would have app wrapper return app, and then let's see, use count. Sorry, counter is use counter. Sorry, use context, counter context. And the thing that has bothered me, so you still have to use signals like this, right? But now we can do counter.increment. And this should still work. Yeah. And what's different now from before is this thing, that you can actually safely just do this. This is not going to cause a problem for you. So if you have a nested context provider, the parent can't cause this thing to reconcile anymore, because this also becomes an observing component with memo. And then you can still use like, and that's also a thing, because this got really messy for me. Like as I was exploring this, you're kind of putting everything in here, it becomes messy basically. So let's see. So, but we can still use this like the Bonsify pattern thingy. So I can say function increment like this. And then I can rather say const state. Now the thing is you can't do anything nested, right? Well, you can kind of do it nested, but not the same way as you do externally. Yeah, so this can become quite clean. But my point is, I think this is a much lower threshold for React developers to embrace reactivity than having like a use reactive thing. Because now this actually works with the existing hooks, because the values are immutable. And the thing that what's kind of cool about this is that when I'm thinking about this article now, like I think about articles all the time, I never write them, but it's this package of making all components observers that enables you to use external reactive primitives, but you can also use internal ones. And it just solves any performance issues, regardless of which paradigm you embrace. Like you just want to do more efficient. You want to like still just use React, but you don't want to meet any performance issues. Well, just use Signal instead of use state. That's all you need to do if you have this plugin, and it will just become ultra performant. Yeah, I find that very interesting. And maybe there's a opportunity here to pivot the impact project. So that it actually has these plugins in it. And then instead of yeah. I need to think about that. The kind of sad thing about that is that we had this cool really cool debugging tool, which you don't really have anymore. Well, we could actually still use it. Oh, that's interesting. We could still use it, like in the sense that if you do this, you could say like use store, for example. And the only thing use store does is basically just hook into the debugger. Yeah. But the whole point there is that like this thing has this create store thing. And what's nice about that store is that it's just like a context, but it doesn't reconcile. But the point is that if you're using React, that's how you think about React. But if you move outside of React, it becomes intuitive and natural that there isn't any reconciliation. So this is also kind of just trying to merge the concepts, but it does it because, well, there are two things driving this. It's well, it's performance, but now we see that just using that plugin, that's what gives you the performance. So now it only becomes about using primitives that takes advantage of that performance improvement. Because it has such cool primitives. Like you even have this query. It's a very nice primitive, and it supports promise out of the box. Yeah, we don't need this use observer anymore. So the only thing that's like very annoying about this is that you like not very annoying, but that's like the cost of doing this is that you have to call all the values. That's the cost. Yeah, and then yeah, that's the cost. And if you don't like that, you don't like it. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna reflect on that. So maybe that is like, okay, if the goal is to reflect on how to best make React reactive, well, first the component has to observe and reconcile optimally. And it does that by using just a plugin. That's all it needs. And it's completely transparent. That's the cool thing. Everything looks exactly the same. It just performs better. And then it's up to you if you want to do reactivity outside of React, which you drop out of the reconciliation loop and you have much more freedom in creating, like, you can do more outside of React. But I do wonder, like, do you really need derived an effect? Like, isn't it enough with just a signal? Well, you would still have dependency arrays, of course, but the point isn't like the blocker with React is performance. Even though dependency arrays is annoying, like as I've stated so many times, like you shouldn't really be using effects with state management. And that's a much simpler cell, right? So you wouldn't use derived, you would just use memo. But again, like, no, but I think that's a fair thing. Like, just have signal, and then you have like, here you could have like use query. It's really cool how it works. And then you have mutation, which is also really cool how it works. But this is like, you don't need to use this. You could use like React query if you needed this stuff. I just like the API better. Yeah, so like, okay. So if you balance like how much to expose versus how much value you get, having just the signal and the plugin, that solves 90% of the issues. I want to argue. %90 of the issues, because that's at the core of state management. You have the actual state, right? State management is also tied to effects and memoization, but at the core, it's just but I do wonder, like, why even use impact for that? Like, I saw this, was it alien signals? GitHub. Yeah. This is like the most performant signal. But this doesn't really have an observer. You know what? We're gonna do another thing here. Alien signals. So we're gonna kind of do the same thing here. We're gonna try to create the observer thing. I think we have to do it manually though. So we're just gonna use the signal from this thing. Let's see, use signal. So let's remove impact. Yeah, and it uses dot value, doesn't it? Where are you? Count. No, it's calling it. How do you set it? Oh yeah, you just call. Okay, interesting. Yeah, so this one's different. So problem with this one is that so alien signals is interesting. Like they try to simplify it, right, by just doing count. But the problem now is that you can't protect it, right? So if I have this provider and I want to expose the count, so if you're able to read it, you're also able to write it. That's a big API problem in large scale apps. But that could be changed, right? So what we can do here is value signal, and then we do use memo on it, and then we return like value signal like this, and then we do value signal like this. So we kind of go back to count set count. Oh, I guess as Yeah. Cool. The problem now is that we don't have any reactivity, and that's because we don't have an observer, because this package doesn't have an observer. That kind of sucks. But it does have effect scope. Or even effect. And that's like a component observer is basically just an effect. The problem is that you have to, yeah, let's see how we will actually implement that. So that will be a very interesting package, right? You have a replacement for use state. So you still use effect, use memo. You do what you do in React. You just get this, install this one package that has a bubble or SWC plugin. You choose. Your React project becomes performant out of the box. And the more replacement of use state with use signal you do, the more performant it's going to get. And if you do any kind of context provider, use signal instead of use state. Yeah. That solves, like, that's the minimal thing you do to fix React. So let's see if we can make the observer work. Interesting. I want to see if we can make an AI write this for us. Would you be able to fix this O3 mini high? So there is this API. I want to create an observer function which will use effect scope to create an observing component to wrap React components. It will use to create an observing component. Can you help me write that? I think this is a deep research kind of thing. Like, we could do that. We could do like deep research on it. Let's see what it spits out first. So let's see if this would actually work. So let me say to force re-render. So this wouldn't actually work. Yeah, so this wouldn't work. Because it, like, this is like reading signals inside this effect will cause it to rerun, but because you have to wrap this one, right? That's how it works. So we're gonna try to, can I like, that would not work. Please do some deep research on this and try again. What would not? Okay. It just needs to work by tracking access to signals in the past component. It needs to ensure no memory leaks in concurrent mode and suspense. It should not matter if strict mode is running. Yeah, are there any specific? So I have had issues with memory leaks previously. But maybe you can solve that. Cool. So then we're going to try with our implementation, see who's best. So we have this So we're basically gonna like just return the same thing. So component extends reactive C, whatever, T, and then we're gonna have our return function as T. So this would be, yeah, it takes the props, and then we have effect scope. So this would be, what does the actual thing look like? Yeah, so would you need to, yeah. Oh, create reactive system. That's interesting. Yeah, because I'm not sure how you do the observer with these primitives, because you have this scope, you have the effect. This is where we would run the component. Yeah, and I guess we would just have a variable for the result and then return the result. I wonder what you can reuse core algorithm via create reactive system. Oh, let's see what this is. Oh. What's this thing? Oh, yeah. Oh, look at this. Create react. Oh, this is interesting. Huh. That's very interesting. Huh. I just wonder, yeah, what should we do here? Update computed. Notify effect. This is very interesting. It's actually like, who built this? I wonder if we could like, yeah, we should probably use this. But yeah, let's see if it's possible to actually, yeah, it's still researching. Okay, so what's interesting here is that you have this effect scope, stop scope. I think the biggest problem here is like this can't work with like this can't work with suspense because we're starting this effect scope and you might not the problem is this starts a subscription, right? And you really want to do stop scope here, as it suggests. The problem is that the use effect might not run because of suspense. So you're fucked. This is the biggest problem with creating these reactive creating these observers, is that you don't have a reliable way to stop the subscription of the observer. So the way this is handled in impact signals is that is that it separates tracking from subscriptions. So this is basically starting a subscription and then tracking. Like you can't separate them. But in Impact, it tracks first and then it starts a subscription on UseEffect, or actually on Usync external store. But here you can't do that, and you have to be able to do that. So we would have to use. Okay, we could ask. I'm gonna start another chat here. Is that still working? Please use this code as reference and build me, and please use this code and build an observer function that takes a component and observes signals consumed by it. Build an observer higher order component function that takes a component and observes signals consumed by it. I wonder what it comes up with. This is very interesting stuff. Is one example. Ugh. Oh yeah, that's of course how you can use, not use memo, just use ref and then you update the ref if you don't have it. I'm gonna find this use observer. Okay. So, okay, let's try to read this. So there's a tick, that's fine. Started last computer render output, that makes sense. Effect ref makes sense. So it creates a new effect where we render out the current result. And then we're binding original notify. Oh, by changing the tick. Yeah. That's fine. And then we say run the effect immediately to capture the initial output. Okay, so there's a new effect in there as well. I didn't know that. And then each re-render. Yeah, but we still have the same issue here. It relies on, like, we still need to separate. Let's see what, oh, use ref. Yeah, no, this doesn't work. None of these work. Let's see. So we cannot stop the effect on use effect because it is not guaranteed to run due to concurrent mode. We need to be able to track first and then subscribe to changes. Is there a way to achieve that? Yeah, then like that's the biggest problem is concurrent mode. Yeah, use sync external store. What does it do now? So hold a ref, blah, blah, blah. Define the snapshot function. This function is called both during render and when React wants to check the external store update. So if effect ref, yeah, if there isn't anything, run it. If we haven't created effect yet, oh, sorry. Yeah, so we run it, blah, blah, blah. If we haven't created it, it runs it. Okay, and then subscribe. The subscribe function sets up a listener for signal changes. So this, yeah, it creates the effect. Oh, this is kind of weird. Because this subscribe has to run before the snapshot. So yeah, that could probably be cleaned up. Create the effect if it doesn't exist yet. Fine. Patch the effects notify method to also call the callback. Yeah, so this is the on using external store. Yeah, this could maybe work. Let's try it. Where were we? Let's do effect. Oh, there is no effect. Ah. Oh, that sucks. Does it have it here? Is that because it used it? What the fuck? Where did it get that effect from? Is it? Oh, that's some serious hallucination. Ah, that sucks. Okay. Okay, we're gonna try to understand this. So you have, what the fuck is link and propagate? I have no idea what this is. Okay, we're gonna take this and then we're gonna try to, I'm really curious about this. So let's drop this and let's create a new blippity boo. Okay, so this is the thing that does a set get, but we don't care about that, and we don't care about computed because we're gonna allow you to just use memo. Oh, so this is like, okay, interesting. So this is where it got the effect from. Subscriber. Oh yeah, whatever. Oh, okay. So this is the effect. So that means we could, but maybe we can do something even better. Start batch. Yeah, we don't need any of this. The batching stuff I don't understand either. With well, generally I think you want it, but not with React. Oh, okay. What should this return? Oh, return true. So we have the signal here, but dependency fields. Oh my god. Old value? Well, we can drop this one at least. Oh, batch depth. Yeah, sorry. So that's fine. And that was just weird stuff. Okay. So we're not gonna have effect either. So what we're gonna do here instead, we're just gonna say export. So we're actually gonna use use signal value t, and then we're gonna signal ref is use ref null if no signal ref dot current signal ref dot current equals new signal value, return signal ref dot current. Well, let's see, const signal equals that thing, and then this is going to be signal dot get, and then new value. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Okay, and then signal ref dot current. So that will be the signal. And then we have this effect. So now we're gonna try to use the thing that it created here. Well, let's do use observer. Let's see if that can work. Then we are using external store. Yeah, and I don't think we need to do, we don't actually have to render. So this is kind of weird. We just have to call it with the props. Component props. Oops. Okay, I'm very curious about how this stuff actually works. So now we have bippity boo here. So we're gonna remove all of this and all of this, and even use signal. And then we're gonna bring in use signal from blippity boo, and then we're gonna make our app observer like so. I guess we're having some issues already. What's it saying? Oh, infinite loop. So what was that? It was oh, it's in the observer. Yeah, exactly. So these needs to be Oh, it's a result that causes an infinite loop. Okay, so you do start tracking and then end tracking. Active sub. So what I'm wondering is if we can just move this into the component. And then you have notify. So how does it actually do this? So it's creating an effect and then it runs. And then we're moving this reference into start tracking and end tracking. But how do you actually dispose of it? Okay, but we can see if it actually maybe this just works. I'm thinking. But I don't understand. How does it get rid of it? Is this how you dispose of it? You do start tracking and end tracking? So it doesn't track anything. That's how it disposes of it? But that doesn't work. Like there's no way to make that work because of concurrent mode. Like if I can't if the tracking itself keeps a reference, if the tracking itself keeps the reference, then it doesn't work. I have to be able to separate that. I have to be able to track and then explicitly say start, like keep this reference. This sucks. Maybe it's a weak map. I don't know. Okay, we're gonna try something. Are we gonna try something? Like if this is some kind of weak map system, repairs the given subscriber to track new. It resets the subscriber's internal pointers. Yeah, the subscriber, right? But I don't want to subscribe yet. I just want to track. And then I want to start a subscription. So this works in impact. So maybe, yeah, maybe that's just silly to try to use that. It will be kind of nice to not having to deal with that stuff. Thinking. Yeah, no, I think, let's see, let's do something different. Let's go to impact, react, GitHub. Impact react signals. So the only thing, it has something called an observer context. Can I copy this? Copy raw file. I'm so happy they finally put that in there. Let's see, new folder. Yeah, signals, whatever. Observer context. Yeah, we're not gonna have any debug hooks. Let's just remove that. Wait, where was debug hooks used? Okay, and then there is no observer context type. I'm just gonna try to clean up this thing. And then I also have, like, I'm tracking getters and setters, which I don't really need to do anymore. The reason I do this is to protect effects. So that if you try to set a value in an effect, but you shouldn't do that. That's just bad code. So that's why I don't want to actually have an effect or derived or anything like that. You can use effect and use memo. Those are perfectly safe to use. Let's see. Okay, but let's not do that for now. Let's just go in and grab the stuff we need here. So we have the actual signal. Oh, sorry. No debug hooks. Cool. And then we have, oh, that was the other thing. We need observers. Copy that. Let's just do that on the index. So let's use observer. Oh, we have useref. Okay. Yeah, I think this is actually fine. We don't need to export the observer. We need to export that observer. Oh, that's not actually a thing. Okay, cool. And then use observer. Yeah, so this could actually be the actual implementation. So how does this work? Use. Yeah. And then context here is really the thing, right? Yeah. Cool. Wait. Return. Oh, sorry, no. Wait. If component, I guess we want to return the observer component, right? Wait. Return use observer. Why do we return use observer? How can this even work? Oh, here we, oh, sorry. Return observer, yeah, sorry. My bad. Yeah, so this would be, oh, sorry. So this is return use observer, but this would of course be a return observer component. Yeah, so on the server, the if component, oh, wait a minute. If component? Why wouldn't you have a component? Okay, so we always have a component, sorry. This is just weird. Oh yeah, sorry. This is the one. This is the other one. Sorry. Okay. But can't this just be if server? Can't I just return a component? That's weird. Okay, sorry. So we have new observer context. Blah blah blah. All of this works, hopefully. And then we can just export. Well, export function use signal. T value T return, well, const signal ref. Well, this isn't true. Signal, yeah, and now signal ref, now I can just do this. Oh, sorry. This is hurting me. Signal ref current, return signal ref current. Cool. So this should work. And now we're not gonna use it from blippity boo. So maybe that signals thing is like super duper performant, but I don't think it really matters. Okay, so what's the problem now? It should be cached. Oh, I think this is just... Oh yeah, it was using that other... No. Use signal. Do I have multiple use signal here? And why are you complaining now? Oh yeah, doesn't matter. There we go. Yeah, now it works. So the thing you really want with React is that you want to set up a tracking subscription, right? So the component mounts, you track whatever it accesses, it subscribes to that data, and then you dispose of it when it unmounts. But React has concurrent mode, which means it can run the body, but it doesn't run the use effect that will dispose of that subscription. So you have to do it differently. You have to first track whatever it accesses, and then actually start a subscription with using external store. That's the only way to do it concurrent safe, as far as I know. And we're doing that now. Okay, so what's interesting about this is that there could be a library which is just replace use state with use signal. That's the message. That's the whole thing. And the difference in consumption is that you have to call the value. Well, you have to use the plugins, of course, but that's nothing. And then you have to call the value when you use it. That's the only difference. But now React scales like crazy. You can use large contexts with a bunch of state. That will just work. And if you want to do any kinds of effects, you do as normal. You use effect with a dependency array. You want to memoize something, you use memo with a dependency array. That's fine. But this is what changes React from being not working at all to actually work. And then you can still argue about like dependency arrays and stuff like that, but then I wouldn't even use React for state management. Then I would just go outside of React. Yeah. I would like to I don't want to track getters and setters. I just want to track yeah. Okay. I feel like I'm on a roll here. I just want to create a repo and let's see. No. Let's see. Let's go and create a repo. GitHub. It's exhausting doing all this stuff. I have so many repos. It's not even fun. So what would this be called? React replace use state. Use signal hook. Is there a package name then? React. Use signal hook. No, that's interesting. Use signal? Well, I guess we should call it React use signal. Of course. Use signal hook. Well, it's kind of implicit, right? Oh, simple hook to create across React like app. What the hell should you call it? Use performant React. Use use React signal. Look at how clever I am. Use React signal. That's the name of it. Replace use state with use signal. and forget about performance issues. Add readme node MIT create repo. Let's clone that thing. Git clone. Let's move over. Do we have Bonsify here? Let's move over my little setup. Boop, boop, boop. I guess that's it. Is this the thing? Yeah. Use React signal. Code. I'm curious about the new. Let's see. And then are we in? Let's close this thing. An in package JSON here. Well, we don't have a package JSON. npm init. Then we need a source directory, a new folder source. We need a new index file. And then we have files and the scripts. Oops, look at that. Let's see. Main. Oh, sorry. Including scripts. And then we have to npm install. Oh, let's do yarn. Oops. Yarn add rimref. Yarn add TypeScript. Did I just add rimref? Ah. Yarn add rimref. Cool. That's basically it. And then we can move over the code that we wrote. So we need an observer context, and then I'm going to use AI to observer context. Claude, could you remove the concept of setters, getters? I do not need it. Just track signals accessed. So you can work on that, and then let's go and grab the signal thing. So the big question is like the promise thing. That should probably also be removed. Because this, like, you need to instantiate promises, right? Yeah, like that's not the responsibility of this thing. So we should remove that promise thing. Yeah, and then we have in index, we're gonna have this thing. Cool. And you know, we can use this is server on the signals as a signal as well, because we don't want it to be a signal when we're on the server. Did you do a good job? Yeah, you probably didn't you? And then please remove the concept of promise signals. Yeah, and then we can install yarn add bubble plugin observing components, SWC plugin observing components, and then we can add new file bubble plugin.ts, and we can install SWC plugin.ts. Well, actually, no. We're gonna just oops. Just gonna paste them. And we're gonna change the name, what do we call it? Use React signal. Yeah, use React signal. Okay, this is nice. And then we can just move over. Yeah, we can move over that. Like I still have a huge ass issue with dependency arrays and stuff, but that means you have to get away from the whole React concept of like value comparison. And I think that transition is very much worth it, but doing it inside of React, especially when you're just trying to explain to people that, hey, and even just being able to say the problem is use state. That's the only hook. That's the problem. Everything else is like fine, but to fix performance, we have to replace use state. That's a much better message. And then you can say, if you want to take like the full leap, you can consider doing state management outside of React, because then you can express changes with the mutable API. But even that, like that's a big problem for teams to do that, because people are coming in. Why does it still use register setter? Oh, didn't it like, oh, register signal. Yeah, and then we can remove this one. Nice. Let's see, is it possible to get rid of these? ESNext lib. What did I need to change? Target library. What target? What the hell is that? Target library? Oh, lib compiler option. Lib? Oh, yeah. Oh, look at that. Yeah, some okay. So what I'm up to is we're talking about the edges here, right? So on one edge, you're using React. You're in the mental model of immutability and value comparison, or shallow comparison. Just start saying shallow comparison. And the core primitive for doing state management is use state. And then you have use effect and use memo on top of that. And then there's this middle ground of reactivity, which is to introduce a replacement for use state itself. where it becomes observation based. So all components are observers, they're memoed, like it's super optimal. And then you start using useSignal instead of useState. But the values themselves are still immutable, and you can still do shallow comparison. So you can still use effect, use memo. React behaves exactly the same. It just is more performant. And you can safely expose as many signals as you want from a context, and you won't have any performance issues with that. So that solves the no-go with React for many developers. And then you have the other side, which is like, no, you can also completely embrace reactivity and go outside of React, where you can have something like observable or reactive, where you also throw aside immutability and shallow comparison, and you just use the mutation API of JavaScript. And you can like build up all your state outside of React, and you can pass in like this single root object that just has all your state. So what I try to do with that use reactive hooks, or I can't even remember the thing, is that I try to bring in like use reactive. And I think that doesn't work, because then you're not fixing the performance issue at its core. You're also trying to make developers adopt mutability, which is a high ask. And it's not the mutability that's the realization. It isn't the mutability that fixes performance issues. It is this package of just making all components observers and memo. That's what fixes the performance issues. So yeah, that's the 30-second summary, I guess. So what we're doing here now is that we are yarn add types. So we're I took the code from Impact React. And cleaned it up so it's only about useSignal and the observer. That's the only code that's in here. And there are I could have used other libraries. We looked at this new thing called Alien Signals, which is like the most performant signals implementation, but that doesn't work with React, because in React, you're not guaranteed that like all these signal implementation, they observe by creating a subscription first. So they create a subscription, then it tracks whatever you're accessing, and then you kind of close the tracking. But the subscription is already active. The problem with that is concurrent mode in React, because when you render, you start a subscription and you track, but the use effect or use sync external store, whatever you use to kind of dispose of that subscription, doesn't happen. So you have a memory leak. But Impact actually solves that, because the tracking is explicitly implemented for. The tracking is explicitly implemented for React. So this would be signal T. Yeah. Does this return? Yeah, signal T. It's very annoying, this. Oh, have they fixed it? Oh, this is interesting. So here it can be null, but when I return it here, oh, they fixed that. That's amazing. Very cool. Yeah, so with Impact React, we create an observer context. And then we actually don't even need a stack now, because you can only render one component at a time. This is very cool, actually. Yeah, you know what? So we're going to do that as well. We actually do not need the stack now. There can only be one observing context at any time. Please rather create a concept of current observing context. Yeah, so we first create observing context, and then we and by creating that, we're tracking it, and then we have this like dispose thing, which we can actually also change now. We can change from that symbol dispose because that was related to resource management, and we can just say stop tracking. But the subscription hasn't started yet, so now you just have like this object that has some references to these other signals, which means that if the component is disposed, the signals are disposed, and the observer context is disposed. But if you actually, React actually runs using external store, then we start the subscription. So that means that when that happens, we start subscription. It has this like hard lock on all the signals, risking a memory leak if we do not dispose of the subscription, but we will dispose of the subscription because of using external store. And it took me a long time to be able to utter these words. Like, OMG, understanding React and figuring out this stuff has been horrible. Where's the symbol dispose thing now? Does not exist. Oh, okay. So what did it actually do? Oh, activate the... Oh, it actually saw that. Wait. What did you actually do? With this change, we've simplified the context by using a single current context reference instead of a stack. Components derived values. Now use the activate method to set themselves as the current one. Oh, wait, did you simplify it even more? Where's the activate? I'm confused. Oh, sorry. Activate. Deactivate. Yeah, we can change the name, and they should be activate by the share. Okay, good, but please rename. Please implicitly just start tracking signals when constructing the context, and change the name of deactivate to stop tracking. I can fix this. That's just lazy. So let's find the constructor. And then this is stop tracking. Yeah. Do we even need to stop tracking? No, we don't even need to stop tracking. Oh, this is nice. Because like, as I said, you can only like track one thing at a time. And we are creating a new context for every time we... Oh, wait, no, we should stop tracking because you might access like things in the use effect or something. Yeah. Stop. Oh, sorry. Stop tracking. Cool. And then in signal, does this change? No, it just uses current. Great. Like, this is super, super simple now. Look at this. There's almost nothing happening here. And I'm sure this can be optimized even more, like in terms of memory consumption. Okay, cool. So now we kind of have that thing. So let's create this yarn create. Oh, I can never remember this. Vite create. Oh, I have it here. Oh no. Vite.js. Yarn create Vite, Vite project, React, TypeScript, Vite project, yarn. Let's make a duplicate of this. Then we're gonna do, I'm gonna do a yarn build of this. Then we're gonna yarn link it. And then we're gonna say yarn link, use React signal. And then in this little Vite project we created, we're just gonna add import use React signal from use React signal a Babel plugin. Babel plugins use React. Oh, okay. Signal plugin. I was very worried there. Cool. And then we have, let's try running the thing. It's running on 5173, localhost 5173. And we have the counter running. And let's see now if we can just do use signal. And of course that TypeScript thing doesn't work. Import use signal from use React signal. And then we should be able to do count. Yeah. And it's, oh, it only worked the first time. Okay, so I'm created a bug. Oh, that would be amazing if that actually worked. Oh, what did I do? Maybe I shouldn't have let the AI go at this. So there has to be something about the observer. So we're creating the observer. Did it change the snapshot? No. This is kind of annoying. Why did it? I'm a little bit unsure how we're gonna. Yeah, exactly. Don't. Let's see what's happening. Like, at least we have a very simple example, so we can figure it out. So basically, let's see if the subscription even updates. That's the first thing we can do. Oh, sorry, it's not here. Update. Whoop. Let's build. No, not. Okay, so the subscription stops working for some reason. How can that happen? Okay, so let's see if it starts the subscription. Starting subscription. Let's see. Yeah, and then it's starting the subscription. Wait, could it be the actual update function? Let's see. So it did start a subscription again, so it should have updated. But I do wonder if it's like related to, where are we updating it? Setting count. So setting count, now it's 0. Yeah, now it's 1. Curious. So we have, yeah, so now let's go in and see what it's actually tracking. Like, it's so simple now. I love that. Oh, what's also interesting, there can only be a single subscriber now. But you still have to actively subscribe. Yeah, but we can change that. Oh, we're gonna, yeah, let's fix the bug first, and then we're gonna simplify even more. So what I don't quite understand is signal getter. Yeah. What the fuck? Okay. So oh, I think I see the problem. Okay, we actually need to. Oh yeah, okay. I see what we need to do. Sorry. So I know the bug. It's because we did. So let's see. Where is the constructor? There we are. Start tracking. We need it to be here. Because React might, like, it runs twice, right? It's because of strict mode. So it runs twice, and that means we might stop tracking, and then we need to start tracking again. So we always need to, I guess we can do context. Context observer? That's a weird name. It should be observer context. And then rename. Observer context. Cool. Start tracking, and then observer context. Stop tracking. Nice. And then we subscribe. Yeah, we need to do it like this. That's fine. But we can still have a single, so we can get rid of like all this iteration stuff. Let's fix that. So there can actually only be a single subscription here. Please adjust the code to only use that single subscription. And I did not realize this, like how insanely lightweight it becomes when we don't do computed and effects and stuff like that. And just like Bonsify, right? Bonsify doesn't have any concept of computed or effects either. Because with Bonsify, the argument is you shouldn't do effects in state management. And if you do have computational challenges with a state value, you should just set the value explicitly. Like you should recalculate the value explicitly when you change the related state, which is not which is theoretically not as safe, but in practice it just gives you full control of managing that performance issue. And it simplifies so much. Like Bonsify is also incredibly lightweight. Cool. Does it work now? Look at that. Do I have a booger? I feel like I have a booger. 2 seconds. Oh, I think I'm fine. Let's see. But this is pretty cool, right? The value proposition of this is... Okay, let's just do this refactor once more. So instead of use state, drop use state, say use signal. Import use signal from use react signal. And then you have to just call the value. And then boom, you have a super performant app. You can put state, create as large context as you want. You can do whatever you want. And React works exactly the same. It just is super performant. That's it. That's it. And you know what? What's really cool about this is that you can still do things like... So now, for example, with use effect, that used to be a no-go. So, for example, fetch data, then data, set data, for example. You can do that now. That's safe because it's subscribing to the signal. But if you were to like set the signal after this effect has run, well, nothing happens because the component isn't subscribing to it anymore. So that's perfectly fine. So we're also fixing those kinds of things. Yeah, I really like the simplicity of this. I think this is worth pursuing. Where is that nice statement? Use reactive react. Oh, no, where was it? I watched Gladiator 2. Where's the... Yeah, reimagining React state. Yeah, so let's see. Let's see if we can make this work for our little project. So React's reconciler leverages immutability and shallow comparison to optimize rendering a smart internal choice, but often cumbersome for component state management. Developers find themselves wrestling with reference equality. Well, this isn't true anymore. Yeah, no, this is too rough. Let's just try to write something on our own. npm install use react signal. And then the use signal hook works exactly like use state, except that you have to call the value to consume it. So counter import use signal from use react signal. And what's really cool is that React could actually do this. They could have a use signal hook, and then if that hook is consumed in a component, they will add like this super lightweight observer to it. Though React would never make all components memo. But you could do that as well, right? You consume the use signal hook, and then the component becomes a memo. It's a very simple thing. Like, as the internal mechanism of React is running the component body, it already tracks like which hooks you're calling. And if one of them is use signal, well, we're going to make it a memo component because it's going to track its, well, that's not true, because you might pass a signal as a prop. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Let's see. Count, set count, use signal 0, return, button, on click, set count, current. Count. Yeah, and then of course, how do we do this? JSON, or actually I'm use bubble plugin from use react signal, bubble plugin. Activate the plugin to optimize all application components with a blazingly fast observation model. To become observers. Why? Replace use state with use signal and forget about performance issues. Activate the plugin to optimize all application components to become observers. The reason, the primary reason developers leans on state management beyond use state is because of its performance characteristics with immutability, with shallow value comparison, components. What? Yeah. Yup. One thing though that I think is also kind of, again, like I think this is even as just an example of just nailing down the core issue. Like you can pass signals around, right? and that signal won't change its reference. But the question is like if you would ever do that. Like if you want to pass a prop to a nested component, would you call the signal and pass the value as is, or would you actually pass the signal of the value? Because that brings you back into, you become conscious about optimizations again. Like you should pass the signal instead of the value. But yeah, developer leans on state management beyond use state is because of its performance characteristics. With shallow value comparison, React quickly its performance issues, especially using context. By simply making all components observers using the plugin and replacing useState with useSignal, your React components will optimally reconcile from contexts or props passing. Out of the box. The library is designed now we can ship it. The library is designed to showcase how React itself could provide such a primitive natively. And then props passing. So I guess we can say okay, props passing. So this would be posts. Yeah, maybe I don't have to document that async thing. So posts would be use signal. Well, maybe we can do it here. And you would do a use effect. Fetch posts. Then data. Oh, sorry. Set posts. Set posts data. Oh. You can safely do this now because the component subscribes to the signal. Because the component is now an observer, which stops observing when component unmounts. Cool, and then return like div, I don't know, posts, map, post. Oh yeah, so this is interesting because now, yes, I guess it's not really showcasing what I wanted to show. Yeah, this is not really showcasing what I wanted to show. Because now each post is not a signal, right? It's just a value. And I guess that's kind of the thing that's icky about this. It's like, okay, You have to call the specific signals, but this is just the cost of the performance gain. Like you leave so much behind, like you leave so much overhead and mental burden behind, but you also kind of gain this mental burden of understanding when you're consuming a signal and when you're not. No explicit observation or memo needed. Let's see. So what do I actually want to showcase here? Like what I wanted to showcase was like passing the prop itself, like as a signal. But I'm not sure if I need to do that. Like the reason this is optimized is just because all observers are also memoed. Yeah, no, I don't think I need to document anything. Well, if there's anything to document, it's the behavior of a component. Component behavior. With signals, state does not change reference. That's wrong. With signals, the references components used to consume state does not change. The references components used to consume state does not change. Const count set count count set count use signal 0. The count itself is a signal, and it will never cause, and it will never, the count itself is a signal and will always have the same reference. That means you can pass this reference through your React application as props or context, and React will not need to reconcile. Only when accessing the count, the component will, only when accessing the count. So what I'm trying to explain here is how this idea of, maybe I should rather start with that. Normally, a component will always reconcile. Or by default. So what I'm trying to explain is that with useState, okay, by default, using useState, all nested components will reconcile. By default, useState causes all nested components to reconcile, right? So whenever you, whatever position in your component tree, you're using a useState, you're changing the state, it will cause a whole branch of components to reconcile by default, right? With context, the same use state will cause all nested components. With context, the same use state will cause all nested components of use context, and will cause all nested components using use context to reconcile. Right? This is the essence. This is the problem. This is why use state doesn't work. So use state works great if your component has a limited set of nested components, or it doesn't have any. But the more nested components you have, the bigger the performance issue becomes, where context becomes the biggest problem, because then it's not just that specific branch of components. It can be like many branches of components that causes full reconciliation. With use React signal, your components does not reconcile by default. They rather observe by default. Oh, this is beautiful. That means exposing a signal as a prop or on a context will not cause the component to reconcile. Only accessing the signal value will. Do not thanks, Adam. Your components do not reconcile, but they rather observe by default. That means exposing a signal as a prop or on a context will not cause the component to reconcile. Only accessing. Yeah, this is a little bit. I can ask ChatGPT to go through this. So I'm thinking about this argument that you shouldn't put memo on all your components. And the reason you shouldn't do that is because your props typically changes, right? With signals, your props and context typically, unlike the traditional mindset of props and context. Do I even need to say that? Maybe not. Maybe this is enough, at least enough for now. So state management beyond is because of its performance characteristics. With shallow valley comparison hits performance issues, especially using context. By simply making all components observers using the plugin and replacing use statement, your React components will optimally reconcile from context or props passing out of the box. Yeah, and then, okay, I'm just gonna dump some thoughts. Effects and computed. Other reactive solutions also includes their own observable effects and computed. This is not strictly necessary for React. Since signal values are still immutable, or can since signal can still be shallowly, is that a word? Can still be shallow compared, just like use state. You can still lean on use effect and use memo. Yeah. I guess the weird thing about yeah, I think the weird thing about using those hooks though, like we haven't actually tried this in an actual app, but the weird thing with use effect and use memo now is that you can't like write let's just do tsx function like counter whatever count set count use signal sorry yeah, so maybe dot value is actually better because now use effect you can't just do. So if you actually want to observe it, maybe use memo is better. So doubled use memo. If you do this times 2, like you have to call it twice. Maybe that's fine. But you could argue that if it was dot value and dot value, it would feel more natural because you're like referencing the same thing. But I'm not sure if that really matters. But you also want to make sure, yeah, I'm not sure. Unlike if you had like actual use computed, you could just do this, right? I wonder what React would have chosen if they actually exported a use signal. Would they use dot value? You know what? We're gonna do dot value, and the only reason is linters. So currently you typically use linters, right? And now you can't. The linter doesn't understand this, so it can't help you with the dependency array. So we're gonna do dot value. Yeah, we're gonna do dot value. Where are you, Mr. Signal? Where do we actually, yeah, use signal. So what is it? Get value. Oh. Yeah, but we can actually change the internals of this. Yeah. So let's see, return. Yeah, sorry. We just need to return this one. So get set signal setter. This would be T. I guess we can return signal setter as well. And a signal now is not this, but it's actually... Yeah, so another thing that's interesting about this is that you no longer... Yeah, but that's a good thing because you don't need a callback anymore. Yeah, let's see. Value is t. Yeah, this is how a signal looks like now. Oh, did you... Wait, what are you complaining about? Oh. Oh, sorry. There should be get value and set value. Sorry. Oh, and this shouldn't return anything. Okay, sorry about that. Let's try again. Yeah, this is definitely the right choice. I feel confident about that. So you have count. Now the thing is that it doesn't look exactly like React. But it has to work this way. Well, I want to argue that you have to have an actual reference to a value or linters are going to break. Yeah, so because we're making the choice here that we're going to actually not add like computed or effects or stuff like that, you're going to lean on the same. So count.value equals count.value plus 1. I guess that's the only thing. Yeah, this is interesting. What are we doing? No, what did I do? Oh, I guess I can't. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's the linters. Like, so now it's much more natural that I do a double use memo. Right? So this is gonna just work. Like even the AI understood this, right? So that's also important. So like AI and linters and everything will just work. But what you could do is we could call it current instead of value, for example, because you already have a use ref. So it will rather work like a use ref. So that's perfectly fine. But maybe that's a bad thing to call it current, because then you think it's a ref, right? Another thing, wait a minute. This gets a bit tricky, I think. Does it? Yeah, how would you like protect your state now? Well, I guess it's no different than... Yeah, you do have... okay. Oh my god, the plot thickens. So in the previous one, you had an explicit reader and a writer, right? So you could just pass the reader down and then protect the setting of the signal, just like it can with useState. But now you're not doing that. Now you can pass the countdown. And if you want to change that behavior, then you can't pass the signal anymore. Like then you have to pass count.value, but then you lose the reason for doing this. So that's a problem again. Damn it. This is annoying. So this is great for use memo and use effect, but it's bad for props passing. So I guess what you can do is like you can do count set count. And then you still do count.value. Yeah, because that's basically the same. And that was actually what I thought initially as well. Okay, so actually we at least need to look at that first. Wait, what did I do? Oh, what's here? So we just need to actually change one small thing. Signal. I don't think we actually need these things. Wasn't I gonna change something else as well? Where do I ever use these? I don't think I actually use this. So signal getter is now get value. Wait, what was that? Oh, interesting. So now this is an immutable thing. So signal is there we go. I think this is how it has to work for it to handle, like it or not, like to handle linters and to also protect it. Also, it makes it more natural to actually update the value, because that's was also a little bit weird that you could just assign the value, right? That's not typical React. What's cool is that you don't have to use the callback to get the current value. You always have the current value available on .value. Yeah. But this is how it has to work. That you have to... The only thing I'm wondering about is typing. Oh shit, I have to go soon. I've been doing this for way too long. Let's see. Yeah, shortly. Cool. Except that you have to... The use signal hook works exactly like use state. How should I explain that? Works. The use signal hook has the same signature as use state. The difference is that the value is a signal. Is that the state is a signal. You have to use dot value to access the actual value. Well, yeah, what's the actual signal here? Oh my god. So now we're saying that the signal is this whole object. But that's not the signal. This is the signal. Yeah. So I want to do this and then oops. And then what this one returns is this. Oh, isn't that typical? As cool. Yeah, exactly. That's what we want. Where did my music go? Oh, what did I do? Oh, what should we call this? What is the signal? Is it I think it makes more sense to say that like the value you get, the thing with the dot value, that's the signal. And then it's just, this is just the hook result. So it makes me think that should even signal setter. Yeah, but we need to wrap it around. Okay, so we can call this a signal factory instead. Or signal wrapper or something. No, we're just going to do create signal. No, we're not going to do that. What is this array? Like it. What is this function? It does create a signal, but it doesn't only create a signal. It creates the ability to update that signal. But maybe this should just be in the, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just put this in the, or should we do that? No, we should not do that. Yeah, by the way, we need to export. What should we call this? Signal factory? Oh, that's weird. Create signal? But we're not really creating the actual signal. We're creating something else. What is this array? Like useState is returning the state as the first entry of an array tuple. But what is that? I always thought about that. What is that array? I think we need to call it signal wrapper or something. Or we could call it the signal tuple. Yeah, let's call it the signal tuple. We can still call this signal, but it returns like a signal tuple. I guess there's a better name for this, like signal. What do they call it in React? Like, what do they call the thing that they return from? Oh, where are we? Accessor? What does this return? No, they don't call it anything. It's just something. Okay, so let's not type it then. We're just gonna internally call it, yeah, sorry. We're just gonna do this, and then we just have to get around the naming here. Where's the signal? Wait, re-exporting? Wait, what is this? Oh, export type, sorry. So this doesn't take the actual signal. Yeah, exactly. It's just a tuple. Okay, so we're going to use an internal name for it. So we're not going to export that, but signal tuple. We could call it something fancy, but so this will be a signal tuple. Cool. Fine. Now build it. Okay, so the conclusion was, by doing it like this, we're returning an actual signal. That signal is accessed by .value, so that linters are able to understand that, like warn you about using use memo and use effect. And we don't return a single value because that's too far away from use state, and also you can't protect your... By the way, do I allow... No, exactly. So yeah, and now the value is actually read-only, just like in React and everything. So it actually operates just like use state and how React wants it to operate. You access the value with .value, which is how you access and observe. You access and observe the value with .value. That's what it is. Okay. The primary reason developer leans on state management beyond use state is because of its performance characteristics. With shallow value comparison, React quickly hits performance issues, especially using context. You orchestrate let's not, by simply making all components observers using the plugin and replacing use state with use signal, your React components will optimally reconcile from context and props passing out of the box. The library is designed to showcase how React itself could provide such a primitive natively. By default, use state causes all nested components to reconcile. With context, the same use state will cause all nested components using with context, use state will cause all nested components, all consuming components with and their nested components to reconcile. And their nested components to reconcile. With use React signal, your components do not reconcile by default. They rather observe by default. That means exposing a signal as a prop or on a context will not cause the component to reconcile. Only accessing the signal value will. Other reactive solutions also includes their own observable effects and computed. This is not strictly necessary for React. Since signal values can still be shallow compared, just like useState, you lean on useEffect and use memo as normal. Linters and typing works as normal. Cool. Yeah, I think that's enough for now. Yeah, that's enough for now. But I really love how lightweight this whole thing has become. Like, it's super, super simple. And we can do like for a constant can be synchronously added back to the signal related to firing the signal. Yeah. When does this happen? Does this actually happen? Can this happen now? A context can be synchronously added back to, yeah, it can. The current context, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm sure there's performance and there's performance and memory improvements that can be done here. What would you suggest as computation and memory optimizations for this file? For this file. Use here are, oh, it actually changes it. Ooh. Use weak set instead of set for tracking context in signal notifier. Use map with weak references for faster lookup. Reduce unnecessary array creation in notify method. Optimize for common case in stop tracking. Add disposal pattern for signal notifier. Yeah, I'm gonna. Okay, we can try to save it and see if it still works. Oh, using weak set and map creates a small memory. I want to argue the problem is memory. It's not performance. Yeah, no, I don't want to discard. I don't want, I want memory improvements. Anyways, I don't think it really has any memory challenges. Like, if you think about how many, like, think about reconciliation, how many objects are created that's just discarded, right? And now we're doing less of that, and we replace it with this super lightweight observer context that's created for every reconciliation. But now there's, as I said, less of it. So the memory footprint is definitely smaller. Okay, I think this is good. Let's ship it. I guess we're ignoring what we should ignore. Is it called what it's supposed to be called? Yeah, use React signal. Initial git push. And then we have this funny npm publish access equals public that I always forget. Imagine that we would actually publish something. We made some quick decisions here though on the signature, but I feel like I have so much experience reading and experimenting with all these different reactive primitives that we did definitely do the right thing here, because we wanted it to be a drop-in replacement for use state in terms of signature. And the only thing we're forced to do is to create an accessor for the signal. And doing dot value was the right thing, because then AI and linters are able to handle it correctly with effects and a memo. And yeah, but it's funny how one thing we haven't mentioned in the docs is how you can safely, if you build up a context, for example, you can safely just pass an object as a value of that context and not worry about that object reference changing all the time. But that's because of the new nature of the components. They don't reconcile by default anymore. They actually have to observe a change to reconcile. So when you create a context provider that just takes children, then there is no chance for it to reconcile. Well, I guess it wouldn't actually never do that in React itself either, because that's a hidden optimization in React, is that when you have the children prop, you only pass children. Yeah. Well, no, that's not true. You would have to memo it, of course, because you can have the parent component that exposes the provider component might reconcile, causing that provider component to reconcile. But if any of the children changes, that doesn't affect the owner of the children. The optimization I was thinking about is if the context provider component, when it reconciles, but it doesn't do that anymore. That's the beauty of this. I want to write about that. So that's the super beauty of this, is that you get this amazingly optimized context. Using component behavior context. Yeah, finally. But it's good, right? To be considerate. I don't feel considerate. I'm dumping projects left and right. I just can't help myself. Now that components only reconciles when only reconcile when accessed signals change. The context providers can safely expose any amount of state. Amount is kind of weird. State without performance challenges. What I also really like about this is the adoptability. Like you can just start using it, right? You add the plugin, everything works exactly the same. Though maybe you'll have like in some apps there could be a performance hit, because well, in theory there's a performance hit because you're now doing memo on all components, right? So if most of your app is driven by props changes, and now we're doing like memo on all components, that's just an additional check, right? But as you start moving to signals, it just becomes more and more and more performant. When access signals change, the context providers can safely expose states without performance challenges. Function app context provider or state. Well, app context provider. Yeah, whatever. And the point is you can like use hooks to expose whatever. Count, set count. App. And what we need here is app is then, well, let's just call it state context provider. And then state would then just be this object of, let's add the count there. And then maybe we'll add like increase, where we say set count, count.value plus 1. And it's nice because we're effectively protecting all the state as well. You can compose multiple hooks together and safely expose them all through the context. Yeah, I'm just going to write that and then it's fine. Okay, so how does this look like? What do we call it? Use react signal. The use signal hook has the same signature. The difference is that the state is a signal. You access and observe the value with dot value. I wonder why you would ever want to do this though. Because you always have access to the current value. But you can. It's kind of nice with Immer because you get that draft thing. Yeah. The primary reason developers leans on state management beyond use state is because of its performance characteristics. With shallow value comparison, React quickly hits performance issues, especially using context. Yeah, let's do a short. I just want to do that here. It's just shorter. Developers lean on state management beyond use state is because of its his performance is with state management, especially using context. By simply making all components observers using the plugin blah blah blah, you're able to optimally reconcile from context and props passing out of the box. The library is designed to showcase how React itself could provide such a primitive natively. By default, use state causes all nested components to reconcile. With context, use state will cause all consuming components. With context, use state will cause all consuming components and their nested components to reconcile. With use React signal, your components do not reconcile by default. They rather observe by default. That means exposing a signal as a prop or on a context will not cause a component to reconcile. Only accessing the signal will. The signal value will. Now that components only reconcile when access signals change, the context providers can safely expose state without performance challenges. You can compose multiple hooks together and safely expose them all through the context. Effects and other reactive solutions also includes their own observable effects and computed. This is not strictly necessary for React. Since signal values can still be shallow compared, just like use state, you use effect and use memo as normal. Linters and typing are unaffected. Yeah, cool. Just some. Okay, we're gonna leave it at that. And then I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with this. If I think it will be valuable to do another stream and just look at family Scrum, and rather use this thing, just to explore actual usage of it, and then kind of learn how it looks like. But this is definitely the lowest threshold to just make React, like do state management in React. That's for sure. I think the one thing that is like a little bit the thing that would really help it is what Preact does. So basically you can because these reactive primitives like view, for example, view uses a ref that has its dot value, but you don't actually use dot value in your template, right? You just point to the signal. And that's what Preact also allows you to do. Just point to the signal. And that's something that React could do natively. Just check, like, is this an element reconciling with a signal? Okay, let me access its value. So that will kind of help. But you do have like, you need to have some relationship to this dot value because you're using it in an effect or with memo. So you might as well just use it in when you render as well, right? So yeah, okay, cool. I'm gonna stop the stream. Thanks for keeping up, or not keeping up, but going through this with me. This was fun, and things are settling. We have Bonsify, the clearest possible for me personally concept of what do you actually need to do that kind of state management. And then we have this thing, which is like the minimal, most precise thing you need to do state management in React. And what's cool is that the thing that binds them all together is like this observer package, the plugins, and then just that pattern of like the constructor pattern thingy. So that's really nice. That choice for me becomes more not about like changing paradigms. It's the same paradigm. It's just more where do I put my code? Kinda, I guess. Yeah. Bye for now.